Hello everybody, I'm Bill Akins and welcome back to my shop. One of the things on my bucket list of projects to make is an instrument. I've always wanted to make an instrument, and not just any kind, but a stringed instrument. I play a little guitar, but not very well. My son's doing quite well with it, and I just want to try to make an instrument. And after looking around, the easiest instrument I think I found to make is one called a Strum stick. And it looks like a little small guitar, but it's kind of based on a mountain dulcimer. I'm following some videos on YouTube and from Andy Mackey. He made these music sticks and give them out to children. And so he's got a series of videos out there. So if you look at his, you'll get all the proper dimensions. But I'm going to try to make one best I can. He calls his the Andy Mackey music stick, but they're also known as Strum sticks. I have picked up a set of fret wire and a set of chrome tuners. So I've got two sets here, and I think I'm going to have enough to make two of these things. Might as well do two while I'm at it. Right here is what I'm going to be making the thing out of, is a walnut log my father cut down up in North Georgia mountains. And right now I'm going to run it through my bandsaw, and I need a 1x1 by 30.5 inch stick to make this out of. So I'm going to oversize that a little bit, then let that set up for a little while to dry, and then I'll plane it down the proper thickness. Well, I got this thing through my bandsaw, and I've sawed off 4 slabs off of it. I'll tell you what, that walnut looks beautiful on the inside. Although the outside seemed dry, still it's got some moisture on the inside. So I'm going to let this, it's about a 3x4 slab set up for a while. I've got a few other projects to work on, but I'm going to let that sit up and dry. And then I will come back and cut this down and try to get 2 good 1.5 inch sticks out of this, and then plane those down to the final dimensions. And some of these slabs here, I'll tell you what, it's just still got some beautiful grain in the slabs. And I'll have to have a triangle in the back, and I think right there, if that's big enough, that may be my back right there. So, can't wait to get this thing going. I use my table saw, and I rip this down to 1 1/8 inch, going both ways, and I've cut it at 30.5 inches long. And I've decided this is going to be my top face, and I have marked on the side here where I'm going to, right here, I'm going to cut the angle off for the head of the strum stick, and then we'll go from there. As I was cutting that big slab of walnut, I got one piece out, and I had some bad cracks in it and some wormholes that went all the way through the other half of it, and I was unable to use it, so I'm only going to be able to make one for now. Alright, I've got my holes marked where the tuners are going to go, so I'm going to drill those out using a 15/64 bit. Now for the top part of the head, I'll be drilling 5/8 holes with a Forstner bit. Well, I did a dry fit of the tuners and they worked real good. So now I have come up on from the other end on the top side, 9.5 inches. Found the center, and I've got a 3/4 Forstner bit, and this is going to drill a hole to start making the sound box. You'll see how that goes in a little bit. Got my hole cut over at the bandsaw, and I've set my fence at 1/8 of an inch plus about a hair. I went ahead right across the top of the hole. I've made a mark, and I've already done a little cross cut there, and then I'm going to cut through here and slice off the top, which will make the recess for the sound box. Well, since my last time down here, I did take a couple of weeks off. What I have done, I went ahead and sanded up to 220 while everything's pretty square. Because once I flare out the bottom, I'm going to round over the neck. You got a lot of curves there, so I went ahead and sanded up to there. I'll have to do some hand sanding later, but that'll be okay. It'll be harder to get the sander in there. And what I have done, I have marked out where the frets are going to go, and I have marked each of those onto the neck. So I have bought a pack of fret wire, and as I cut these, you don't have to cut into them far, but if you can see there, you can see how the frets are going to go in there. And then I'll snip those off as I start putting them in. But I want to go ahead and cut them now where everything's good and square, and I can put it in my bench hook. Once I round those bottoms over, it'll get to rolling with me and make it harder. Alright, I have also marked down here up to this hole where the end's going to go, and I've marked that 1/8 of an inch in, and I'll cut that on the bandsaw here when I get through with this. But I decided to go ahead and get this done first while it's still good and square. So I have done one here. Also, I'll be putting 3 frets at the bottom of each of the tuner holes where the strings will lay. And the top one where the nut goes, it needs to be a taller fret, which I didn't want to buy a whole pack just for 1-inch piece of that, so I may wind up putting something else there or putting another little piece of wood on top of it and then cutting into that. So, but what I'm doing, got it on my bench hook, and I'm putting my speed square on there, and I'm using my gent saw. Let that speed square be my square guide. Need a little bit more. Doesn't take much. And that should do it. And after all the cuts, I will test and make sure it's deep enough to hold the fret. It's a little bit looser than what Andy Mackey did, but he had a special fret saw, I believe, because it's just not quite enough to hold it. So I'll probably put a little CA glue in there when the time comes, but I'll worry about that at that time. So now I just want to finish cutting these out. Okay, after testing all my slots for my frets with a piece of fret wire, they're all good. Cut a little bit deep in a few places, but that's okay. I did it by hand. Then you saw me cut out the strip down the middle right here. And it was this piece right here. And then for the end piece, you take a piece of that, and I cut it off at 15 degrees on both sides, just like a parallelogram. And then at the longest point, it's 3 7/8 inches. And that will go here on the end when I spread it apart. And actually, to tell you the truth, I'm a little nervous about spreading this because it didn't say anything about steam bending it. So I'm just going to spread it and hopefully it won't crack. Alright, also inside here I took a couple of rasp and some sandpaper, and I've sanded the inside up to 220. It's not never going to be seen, but I wanted to get some little saw marks out, and I've also sanded this piece up to 220. So next I will be getting the router table out and running over the back edges of the neck. Okay, now time to glue up this end down here. I've already tested it and it spreads apart pretty easy. The piece I cut a while ago, I cut it and got it all ready, and I was testing it, and I'm like, that thing just don't look right. So I went back to my video there and the instructions. I cut this thing way too short. Fortunately, I had enough left over, so I'll recut another one at the right length, so we're good to go. So it looks a lot better. What I have done about 5 minutes ago, I put a little glue on the ends, and then right here let it kind of pre-soak in. So now I'm going to come back, put a little bit more glue, at the joints. I had a feeling that wood might be a little thirsty, so I want it to kind of pre-soak a little bit. Alright, Now spread this guy apart. What I have done here, I've put a clamp right here at the end of the neck to keep it from splitting. I've also, on this end down here, I put a hole fast down to keep it from moving around. So I spread him apart. Get him in there. I've got a piece of blue tape sitting underneath it on my workbench to keep it from sticking. I'm going to put this block of wood on this end and another hole fast. Keep that in because it will shoot out. It's spring loaded. Alright. Make sure those are nice and even. I'm going to take another clamp and I am going to put just a little bit of pressure. Not much. There's a lot of pressure on there already from that spring loaded by spreading that out. So I'm going to let this set up a day or two before I get back on it. And then the next thing we'll work on is the back. Well, I came back after last time, took the clamps off, and I got my end on here, and it looks pretty good. I did a little touch-up sanding on my joints, you know, where the glue was and everything. Also, I had glued a thin strip of walnut up here where the nut's going to be, so that fret will be a little bit higher than the rest of the frets. Got that ready. Also, I have planed a piece of walnut down. I don't know if you can see it here, but I've already traced out. This will be on the back side. This side here had a lot of tiger stripe, and I was tempted to put that on there, but I'm going to let that be on the inside of the instrument. But I got that. And then for the top, spruce is the best thing, but I don't have any spruce. And I did have a nice little piece of cedar, and you can also use cedar if you don't have spruce. So I have planed these down to 1/8 of an inch thick. A little bit thicker than 1/8, and I've sanded these up to 220, and I've traced it out. I will cut the hole out of here in a little bit for that. But for now, I'm going to cut these out, and I'm going to glue the back on. Okay, ready to put this back on. Put a little top bond too. Making a mess. Nice even coat. Right. Center up my back. Just put a little pressure so it'll stick real good. Making sure it seals up. Now what I'm going to do instead of clamps, I'm putting a big board here and this heavy block. I think that's going to be enough pressure. I may add a little more, a little bit. The only thing left to do today, I went ahead and found the center line of the top piece, and I come down 4.5 inches, and I'm going to put a 7/8 hole in there. And there's my sound hole. If you'll notice, I cut the outside of my lines a good 1/8 of an inch. After the glue up and everything's dried and good, I'll come back and sand those down flush with the sides. But I think it's going to be a pretty top on there too. It'll brown up. It won't be so pink when it gets on there, and it's got some nice design, grain pattern. So looking forward to getting that on. Well, after gluing on the back last time, I came back about 6 hours later and put the top on it and glued it down, put the weights back on it, and you can see here It's coming along pretty nicely. What I need to do now is go back to the bandsaw and trim up these edges as close as I can get them. Then I will sand these down flush and smooth all the way around. Also, where this sticks up right here a bit, I'm going to taper this down till it blends in with the neck of the instrument. And then after that, start putting these frets on. While I was out today, we had our Modern Woodwork Association breakfast and had a good time there, talking about projects and whatnot. Stopped by the music store and I bought a set of strings for this thing. They don't have Strum stick strings there, but I did get the sizes off the internet, so I got just strings for that. So that'll be the last thing I do. So let's head to the bandsaw. Well, I've got it all sanded smooth up to 220 and the corners around it a little bit. And now I'm switching to some 320. I'm going to do a little hand sanding with that. Make sure all the edges are kissed. And I'm going to touch up the holes a little bit with some of this. And then we'll be ready for the frets. I used some 320 and hand sanded and got it all nice and smooth. Took a little, I was out of mineral spirits, so I used a little denatured alcohol, did a wipe down on it to get the dust off. Man, it brought out the color and that's going to look sharp. So, time to put the frets on. So what I'm putting on here, if they fit in there in the grooves nice and neat, and in a real world they should fit in there perfect, but I do not have a fret saw. I use my gent saw, which thinnest thing I had. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little CA glue and more out of there. A little excess there. Alright, I'm putting the fret, I'm going to overhang the other side just a little bit. Tap. Just hold it there for a few seconds. Let that set up. And I could put a little activator. Alright. Let that set. And I'm going to take 3 of these at a time. My CA glue is getting a little thick on me. I am going to do 3 of these at a time. Let that set for maybe 5 minutes. I know the glue's probably pretty much set. Then I'll come back, take some snippers and snip them off and keep working my way up the neck. Well, I have all my frets installed. I filed each one down a little bit and then took a little sandpaper and smoothed them up so they're nice and smooth. On this end, right above where the nut goes, which I have decided to redo my nut. I didn't like it, it wasn't high enough, so I've made another one and I will put that there in a minute. But I went ahead and drilled 2 small holes and put in 2 brass pins, 1/8 inch in from the side. And I've wrapped a string around it and I bring it down, and on this end right here I'm coming in 1/4 inch, and I'll hold that string till it's the same 1/8 inch in all the way down the neck. And when I'm happy with that, take a little awl, mark it, and I'll do the other side. Then I will find the center of those 2 holes for the center pin. Alright, I've already done 2 holes, now I'm going to do the center hole. use my egg beater drill. Okay, now I'll put my brass pins, and that's where the strings will attach. You could get a tail piece down there, but this is the way Andy Mackey did it, and simple. That's what I'm going to do. Well, it's time to apply some finish. What I'm going to be putting on here is a mixture of boiled linseed oil, denatured alcohol, and shellac. And I'm just going to wipe it on with a paper towel. I've used this finish on several things. And I know it's going to bring this wood out. Oh yeah. Nothing like walnut popping out when you put that finish on. And this will dry very quickly, and my goal is to get at least 3 coats of this on here. I should have used a rag. Those frets kind of eating my paper towel up. Got a nail up here in the floor joist above my head. I'm just going to hang on that to dry. Let's see what it does. You can see that walnut's really coming out. Oh yeah, the cedar's going to look good too. Bit pinkish, but that's going to darken up. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Wipe this down a little more. I'm going to let that dry for about 10 minutes. Come back, put a couple more coats on like that, and let that set for a day or two to cure. Be ready to put strings on. Well, I came back to the shop this morning. My finish was all dried and cured, and I've just hit it with a coat of Renaissance wax. A little buffing down there. And also, I have started putting my tuners on. It did not come with any screws, and I didn't have any small enough. I may hunt for some later, but I just used some of the brass pins that I used for the neck here. And I've got one left to do. Taking my little egg beater drill and drilling a pilot hole. Put my little pin in. I'm just using my wooden mallet for these. Okay. Next, strings. I picked up a set the other day. This is the 24 gauge wire for the top. Got it threaded through the little loophole there. Put it on that bottom pin. Cinch it up. Got through my first tuner. I have not strung a guitar in a long time, so this might be interesting. around it a couple of times, I'll poke it back through the hole. And tighten it up. The top one goes on the outside of that pin up there. That's some interesting sound. All right, I'm going to put the other two strings on, and then we'll put the bridge in. That's the last thing I have. Well, I've got all my strings on. I've got my bridge in. It tells you the exact place to put it, the distance between here and there. And I still have to tune it. I'm going to have to sit down with the computer tuner and tune it, but way out of tune, but it does have a good little sound in the sound box there. I'm happy with it. So now for the hardest part of this job, learning how to play this thing. So I'm going to get it tuned up, and I found me a chord sheet for Strum sticks and try to learn me a little song, and I'll see you back on that later. Well, the Strum stick is all finished up. We've had a little knob on the end and just a string, drawstring around the neck. Not being a guitar, you can't put it in your lap. It's a little too far down. This makes it just about right. I've been tinkering around with it for a few days and trying to learn a little bit, learn how to tune it, but it's got really good volume. Actually, it sounds pretty good. Trying a little song or two here. Let's see what I can do. A little Amazing Grace there. Just working with the picking right now, but you can add strumming while you're doing that. Which adds a little more to it. I'm still working on my chords. Even with the guitar, I've always had a hard time with my short stubby fingers making chords. But like I said, I'm real proud of this thing. The sound is really good. Little Dixie there. But if you're interested in making one of these, I strongly suggest you go look up the Andy Mackey music stick. He's got a half a dozen videos or so, gives you all the dimensions you need and all the steps you need. All the wood I had in my shop, I spent a few bucks on some tuners, strings, and the frets. I've got maybe $12, $15 in the whole thing. But it's fun to play around with. My son's been working on it quite a bit, and I think Trey's trying to take it away from me, but he can't have it. So go make you a music stick.